DJ PK, we're joined now by Tim Brando, Fox Sports broadcaster. You see him on college football games all season long. Tim, welcome back to the show.
Great to be with both of you. By the way, just so you know, okay, this is a real bonus for you because you're getting some comments today from the guy that's going to be on opposite your game with Texas Tech, doing a pretty big basketball game on Fox between Duke and Michigan State. I just thought I'd get that shameless plug out of the way. Okay, if the game doesn't go well for BYU early, just tune over, and I've got a good basketball game for you to watch. In fact, a great one between number 4 and number 7.
Okay, that was not a shameless plug. That was not a shameless plug. That was a public service announcement because I'm a guy and I have a remote control in my hand, and I got to have somewhere to go at halftime and during commercial breaks.
Right.
I always want to.
Now you know.
Yeah, and everyone here is watching because Duke's got Boozer, and he's going to be a top 3 draft pick, and the Jazz are winning a bit, and unless they get lucky in the lottery. But his dad played here, so he's a story. He's a story,
Absolutely.
no doubt.
Yeah.
All right, so here's another story. There look to be a half dozen teams that can make a rock-solid argument. In all honesty, they really can make good arguments for one of those last 2 or 3 spots in a college football playoff. So 3 of them get in and 3 of them don't. And who do you think should fall on which side of the line? Who do you think should be in out of that Oklahoma, Alabama, Notre Dame, BYU, Texas, Miami group?
Well, there's a shall we just call it a conundrum?
There you go.
It's a big-time conundrum. And as I said, when they went to 12 teams and people were saying, it'll be so much easier when we have 4 go to 12, I was like, no, it's not. They're just going to screw it up even more and piss off that many more people, which is exactly what the committee has done from week to week with these god-awful Tuesday shows that have no business being on the air. It's just a complete waste of time, and I feel a lot of empathy for Reese Davis having to host that thing. When you know you have to ask certain questions and you're never going to get answers but talking points, that's what they get. And it is a corrupt system. I don't think that the committee members are corrupt, but they're part of a corrupt process. And there's no getting around this. It's been set up to fail from the moment they decided that they would hold on to the committee concept, when it's been proven time and time again that this committee is manipulated by the movers and shakers of all of the conferences that have brand name recognition. There's a reason why Alabama moved ahead of Notre Dame in last week's poll. It's not because Alabama deserved to. Hell, they barely beat Auburn. In fact, without a bunch of turnovers, they wouldn't have beaten Auburn, but they moved ahead of Notre Dame. Something that Miami couldn't do. Why do you suppose that's true? Because they wanted to make absolutely certain that an Alabama loss would not cost them an opportunity as an at-large bid. That's the reason. Okay, Alabama is a brand, and they got screwed a year ago when SMU got in, at least in the minds of their commissioner and others that have a lot of power. And so they are going to be in no matter whether they win or lose against Georgia. And yet, here's BYU, a team with an exemplary season, who by every metric in my mind, outside of the quote-unquote all-state playoff predictor, the 3 worst words in sports television today, the all-state playoff predictor, it makes me nauseous. I'm nauseous every time I hear it, that BYU has to do something that Alabama doesn't, and that is win their conference title game. And that's the only way that BYU is going to get in. They're not going to be picked even if they're competitive against Texas Tech and lose. So you tell me what's right about that concept. It's pathetic. And until we get some real leadership, and until the commissioners get rid of their own hubris and decide that they've got to work together as opposed to against one another, we're going to see this in college football. I tell people all the time, I'm so happy that I'm doing a basketball game like Duke and Michigan State, opposite these playoff games and championship games, because by this time of the year, as much as I love college football, and I think you guys know how much I love it, I'm so angry at the system, this corrupt system that screws up the postseason every stinking year. These championships that are being won in the playoff are just as mythical as the ones that were given and by the AP and the UPI in the 80s and 90s. They're just as mythical because there's a process here that is absolutely not objective in any way, and teams are being selected. They're not qualifying by earning it on the field. And there's been no steps to make it easier for the committee at all. The committee is in a no-win situation, but they're also just fraught with bias that comes from relationships that they have with the other committee members, many of whom are athletic directors at schools and institutions around the country, former commissioners, and now there's one media member, Ivan Mizell, who's a fair-minded guy, but enough is enough. We need to blow this thing up, and we need to move. If we're going to move to 16, let's go and take a real strong look at having teams qualify and earn bids through some form of a playoff within their own league. So you can determine, for instance, who the third or fourth team out of the Big Ten or SEC that should go. Not just automatically give it to them because, oh, it's Alabama, or, hey, if Texas happens to not get in, what a travesty. They won't schedule Ohio State anymore. That kind of garbage being spewed week after week after week, particularly at the worldwide leader who has a monopoly over the playoff. And by the way, the playoff television contract was never bid upon by other networks. Fox never had a chance to get that. Neither did CBS, neither did NBC. There was a wink and a nod, and Disney was just going to take care of it. And they were going to put so much money up that it would make no physical sense, that they would lose money on it and still be okay. That's why this exists. And they'll put in whoever the hell they want to put in to get as many eyeballs as possible, which means any team in the Mountain Time Zone, like BYU, like Utah, is going to be, on most years, screwed, absolutely screwed. So that's my story, and I'm sticking to it.
Yeah. The part of the problem, there are many problems, but part of the problem, don't you think, is the 16, in the case of the Big Ten, the 18-team league, and top teams aren't playing each other. Ohio State had 10 gimmies in a row. Texas A&M.
Yep.
Good thing they scheduled Notre Dame because other than Texas, they didn't really play anybody who was any good in the SEC. They didn't play anybody else in the SEC with a winning record. And it's every league. I'm picking on those leagues. But in the Big 12, Houston didn't play BYU or Utah. If they'd gotten to the final by avoiding two of the top three teams in the league, that would have been terrible. Now they lost, so it doesn't matter. But it seems like the math is just set up for failure. We're going to play 9 league games, but we got 16 or 18 teams. That's going to be a problem.
Right. Right. Well, the commissioners did what to themselves? They protected their brands as best they could. Right. That's what they were doing, and so everyone has a level of responsibility here, and that's why I say the collective hubris of those that are in governance needs to be washed away. Listen, I'm at full disclosure. Tony Petitti is someone I worked for 9 of my 18 years at CBS. He's a very intelligent guy. He's not a guy that is as accessible to the media. And as a result, the stories that you read from the guys that cover our sport and cover it well, I'm talking guys I really respect, like Brett McMurphy, Ross Dellinger, Dan Wetzel, a lot of guys that do a great job of covering the sport nationally. They are at odds with the Big Ten commissioner because he just won't talk to them. Now, Greg Sankey, on the other hand, who came up through – not television, but he came up through, the aristocratic world of intercollegiate athletics at the NCAA level, okay, from the Southland Conference through the NCAA on their infractions committee and all of that. Hell, he'll throw a press conference in the parking lot of a Home Depot if there's a camera around. So he'll take care of the narrative for the SEC, which is perfect for ESPN because tomorrow he'll be doing an hour-long filibuster on why Texas absolutely has to be in with 3 losses because they beat the number 3 team in the country. And they'll give him that. Well, I think that we really need to step back and look at the principal concepts of having 16 teams playing and having these championship games in the conferences go away. It was a revenue stream getter in the beginning when the SEC started it in 92, but now it's outdated, especially with 12 teams, and even more so when we go to 16. We can have no buys and have every team play every team beginning this weekend and carry it through December and hope and get the thing over with on New Year's Day if we just listen to reason. And scheduling and the integral part of the scheduling would be that all four of the conferences would have an understanding that at the end of the year, you're going to put the teams that are involved in the chase to get into the field of 16, let them play and earn automatic qualifying positions. Think about it. If the Big 12 was guaranteed 2 in the 4-4-2-2-1 concept that Commissioner Petitti brought up back in the summer, that everybody just went berserk, said, no way, we can't do that. Wouldn't you take that now over what we have? The Big 12 has to have BYU win to get 2 in. Hell, the ACC is in a position that if Duke wins, they may not get any team in. So wouldn't Yormark and Phillips both be the commissioners of those 2 leagues in a better position if we adopted that concept? Let those bids be earned as opposed to be selected. The less we have the committee do, the better. And so that's one area where Petitti, in my mind, has a hell of a good idea, and yet is not getting any credit for it because he's been a public relations nightmare for the people that govern that cover the sport. Okay, Tony's just been, I think, misrepresented in a lot of ways because he's not been available and has not been accessible to the media.
So we can sit here and complain, and I'm finding this very therapeutic. This is much cheaper than a therapy session. Thank you. This is great. But is anything going to change? Or if we call you up in a year from now, all right, there may be different schools and different names. They may be protecting somebody else, but it'll be the same. It'll be the same dog and pony show a year from now.
No, the short. What I just laid out for you there was, I think, the short-term answer on how we could at least stabilize things a little. That's where I think the commissioner of the Big Ten has a good idea. But the bigger picture here is not a very optimistic one because, we have this new College Sports Council concept where they're sending out these letters about, the rev share being adopted and this hope that we're going to cap the NIL at $20.5 million through rev share. Well, none of these schools, I think there's a handful of schools, maybe 7 or 8 that have signed it. No one else has. Yeah. Which tells you that there's no way Texas Tech is suddenly going to say, oh, we spent $27 million this year. They're asking us now to cut that budget? No, I don't think so. No. If you're not committed to putting a college football program in the best possible chance to win as an institution, then just don't take part. Don't be part of this. There are lines being drawn across the country with respect to who wants to compete at the highest level and who doesn't. And when you see teams, and this is the encouraging part, when you see teams like Texas Tech or like Indiana that have been party crashers, not blue bloods, that have earned the right to be really respected, then that should tell these schools that don't want to do it that maybe they should just opt out. They should just get out because this is where the sport is going, and we're not going to suddenly, bring the boat back in and dock it. We're moving forward here. So, $20.5 million is what you're on the hook for, but these schools are not going to suddenly sign and the reason they're not going to sign it is because there's no authority for anyone that governs, whether it's the Big Ten commissioner, the SEC commissioner, ACC, or Big 12. There's no one with the authority to invoke any penalties for anyone that doesn't sign it. So we've got to find a central leadership, and that central leadership comes in the form of a czar/commissioner for the totality of the sport, something I've been screaming about from the hilltop since I started hosting the original game day in 1987. College football needs a version of Goodell, a version of what David Stern was for the NBA. And until they come to terms with that somebody has to lead all of college football, not just the conference, but the entire constituency of Division I, we're not going to see any semblance of stability for college football moving forward.
But the whole commissioner thing started with the Black Sox scandal. Baseball was really up against it. A World Series was fixed, and the public was horrified, and the owners were panicked that their investment is going to go to zero. The answer to all your questions is money. Don Olmeyer, Best answer ever. Stands the test of time. Well, football right now, for all the chaos and the teams and the conferences are getting the short end of the stick and they deserve a fair shake and they're not getting it, everybody's making money. Ratings are up. TV contracts and payouts are great. I mean, I just don't see the sense of urgency until someone puts their hand in the wallet and opens that thing up and is like, there's nothing left in the wallet. And maybe they can spend themselves to oblivion with NIL. Maybe that would do it. Maybe.
Yeah. Well, there's nothing you said there that's inaccurate. However, with all that money, all that revenue that's there, okay, and this was the point that Cody Campbell was making when he did those ads for the act, that's being lobbied and talked about in D.C. and in Congress, and nothing's really gotten accomplished there, and I don't think it'll ever even come up for a vote. But the reason that college football still is even though they're making all that money, and even though the company I work for and the company that it has the monopoly over the playoff, like ESPN, the reason why the schools are making money, but the networks are not paying as much as they should for a property that is that popular. College football, by far and away, is more popular than the NBA and Major League Baseball, and yet it is the fifth most compensated sport in America. It's fifth. So there's a lot of money being left on the table. Why do you suppose that is? Because when contracts like the college football playoff come up, these curmudgeons that govern it will have a wink and a nod and say, let's just do this. We won't even put it up for bid, and no one will say a damn thing. Well, guess what? I'm the mouth that roared from the South, and will say it. It's wrong, okay? It's absolutely wrong. And if you took them to court, if you took the college football playoff to court and said this is absolutely not in keeping with how America should do its television contracts, okay, it should be making more money than it currently is. And it would. And more of America would understand that if, like the NFL, all of the networks had a piece of the pie. And trust me when I tell you, all of the networks would love to. You saw what happened most recently. In the time that I've been at Fox, we didn't have the Big Ten. We got the Big Ten. And then in the last deal that Kevin Warren wanted, okay, Kevin Warren was the commissioner when they made that deal, not Tony Petitti. Okay, we sold 2/3 of the contract to the NBC company and the CBS company. And they are airing, and you'd think, oh, that's great for the league because they're making so much more money. And they are making more money than the SEC because they have network deals. But they're still in the position they're in because, now all of a sudden all of the games in the Southeastern Conference are on one network or between ABC and ESPN. And those games now are, Fox was the number one network for college football with its noon window until we got rid of the entire Big Ten. When we got rid of the Big Ten and sold off 2/3 of it to
CBS and NBC.
NBC and CBS, ABC and ESPN now are the dominant. They've got the most viewers, and they've got the best games that are on in those different time slots. So, but all that being said, if all of the networks were involved in the postseason of college football, the money would be astronomical, absolutely astronomical, and we wouldn't be having the same issues and the soap operas and the back and forth controversies. And listen, I've been very critical of some of what's been said and some of what's been the propaganda that's been fed to the public that comes from the talking heads of ESPN the last couple of years. I like those guys. Hell, I have affinity for ESPN. But the reality is, when you control something like that, you do have tremendous influence. So when Reese Davis says it's preposterous to think that anyone at ESPN has influence, my God, everyone that's on national television has influence. We had 25 million viewers in 1987. Not everybody had cable back then, and we had influence then. So it's clearly there now. We all should be promoting one another. We should be talking about the games that are going to be on every network, just like the NFL.
The NFL.
How many times do you watch?
And the NBA does it too, right? Yeah, the NFL and NBA both do it.
And, oh, by the way, you can see that game. If I'm calling a game, this happened the other night. Arizona is playing Arizona State, and the Texas A&M game with Texas ended, and I knew that. My producer said that Texas A&M game just ended. I said, well, when we come out, let's welcome those that were watching that game.
Nice.
Because we're the only game on. That's the thing that we all ought to be promoting, the totality of the sport. And we all should be working together as opposed to poking holes in one. And that's true whether you're a broadcaster or a conference commissioner or an athletic director. The money that's being lost, even with all the money that's being gained that you're talking about, that's all true. That's all factual. We're still losing more money than we're making in college athletics because we don't do it the right way.
Tim, we'll leave it right there. We appreciate the time. As always, thanks for joining us. And you know you'll have at least one viewer for a couple of minutes here and a couple of minutes there during commercial breaks. I'll check on Duke and Michigan State.
And by the way, I think BYU has a real good chance of winning. I'll tell you why. Texas Tech has been told by the All-State playoff predictor that they have a 99% chance of getting in, win or lose.
Yeah. No, hey, desperation, right? Desperation matters.
That might help. That might help. And by the way, let Bachmeier throw on first and second down so you can loosen up that defensive front, and then L.J. Martin will get his yards. So that's my prediction on the game.
All right. Thank you, Tim. There's Tim Brando.
My pleasure.
Fox Sports joining us once again right here on The Zone. Along those lines, I was told one interesting thing by someone who's followed college football for a long time, that and they get to talk to coaches privately. And they say, and this is something to watch for, Yacht, because you're way into it. And this person told me this week, the thing about the conference title games and the playoffs, the players are opting out of the bowls if they have NFL prospects. We all know that. They can't opt out of the college title game in the playoffs yet, although there are people who think that's coming one day. But they definitely play with it in the back of their mind. And the team that's all in and it runs through every block, and as opposed to, hey, I'm not going to blast this guy out of bounds. I'll just shove him over to the sideline. It gets to be a mentality. And coaches see it on film, and it drives them crazy. And that's what this person told me. And they didn't – we'll see. I'll see if we can get them to say it on the air. But I thought that was a super interesting take. And they don't really have a dog in the hunt, but that's what they get when they talk to college football coaches. All right, DJ PK, we'll come back. Your feedback next. Stay with us.